All right, Doug, we're back with questions from members of the file. First, we have some philosophical questions from one of our file members. He says, Doug has mentioned many times how he feels governments should be kept to three types of dealings: protecting the people from foreign force, like military, protecting the people from internal force, that's the police, and overseeing a legal system for the resolving of disputes, that's the courts. He mentions that government shouldn't be involved at all in things like money and schools. My first question is, if this is the case, how and by whom is money supposed to be distributed, regulated, and preserved?
Well, the answer to that is pretty simple. Gold would be used as money, not a gold-backed currency or even just gold is used as money. The way was the case before 1933, when people actually carried gold coins around in their pocket to pay for things. They were transported on stagecoaches, and we've seen train robberies and this type of thing. Yeah, that's what it would be. And as far as in what form it would be, well, whoever has the most trusted mint mark, that might be the US government, or it might be any number of private mints. It's actually pretty simple.
So that explains how it would be regulated. It doesn't need to be regulated. How it's preserved, it doesn't need preservation. And distributed, I guess that's the media format you just talked about, which is whichever mint has the highest credibility. So I guess that's all
It's
three.
actually it's actually very simple. And the 10,000 people that are now working for the Federal Reserve could go out and find productive employment, like the 13,000 people working for USAID, because they really serve no useful purpose in a free market society. None.
In fact, it's destructive, as we've seen from the leaks around the USAID.
Yeah,
So,
precisely. And
okay.
at the same time, I should add as an adjunct, banks would have to work on a 100% reserve as well. In other words, uh, once again, the difference between demand deposits, where you pay the bank to store your money and transfer it and another fee to transfer it to people, store and transfer. And then you have another kind of bank account called a time deposit or a savings account, where it's set aside like a certificate of deposit, set aside for a particular period of time because the bank has to lend it out to somebody else for that period of time. The money can't be two places at once. So the whole banking system today is built on an inverse pyramid. It's all got to be changed radically, starting with using gold, not fiat or credit as money, and going down to the corruption of the banking system.
Okay. All right. His next question is Doug says that the worst kind of people are inevitably drawn to politics, busybodies that think they can and should control people. Quoting you. He says, so long as you have politics, you're going to get criminal personalities that are drawn to it. Could it be said that the reason politics will always exist is because criminal personalities will always exist? And is politics not the arena in which archetypical personalities come to battle, the battle of who gets to govern between said criminal and non-criminal personalities?
Well, that is a good question. What is the nature of man, and what are the aberrations that afflict a minimum number of people that always get into politics? But the way you can solve this, to the degree it can be solved, I mean, I don't know how you solve the problem of evil that lurks in the hearts of men. That's a big problem. But you certainly can deny them a superstructure that makes it possible and easy for them to impose their evil and stupidities on everybody else. That's why you don't want the government to do anything but protect people from force initiated by others, which the court system decides. And of course, I can argue that the um, the police and the army and the courts are such important things for the running of a sane civil society that they're way too important to be run by a government which will still draw the wrong kind of people. So those things can be privatized too. I know that's shocking to most people, but there are good arguments that can be made for that being practical. And once again, I'll recommend the book, The Market for Liberty, which incidentally was instrumental in Javier Milei having gotten to where he is. I mean, he's a big fan of that book,
which you wrote the forward to, if I
which I
recall.
wrote the forward to and gave to or I didn't give to, but recommended to a friend here in Argentina who was a friend of Milei's who translated the book into Spanish. So, yeah.
All right, his third question says, what are Doug's thoughts on the cyclical nature of time and the quality of people? Is he a believer in things such as the Hindu cosmological yuga cycles? In his study of history, has there been any clues of higher quality people in certain time periods? Could it be possible that things like a truly free market would only function best in a supposed golden age where there are ample amounts of high quality individuals to make them function properly?
Well, I have an old friend. He's an ex-CIA agent, and he's really into this stuff. He's very commonsensical, rational guy, except when you get him into this stuff. Uh, so some people do believe in this. But look, uh, and I hate to refer to the science, but here's what we think we know as geologists and archaeologists, that people were, having evolved from Australopithecines and the Pithecanthropus and other pre-Homo sapien types. Uh, we went through a long ice age, and where am I going to start with this? Uh, as far as we know and can determine at this point, uh, biologically modern humans have been around for about 300,000 years. Okay. So people that are kind of like us have been running around for that long, 300,000 years. And there's no evidence that anybody's found so far of a golden age at any point. And civilization started after the last ice age, which ended about 12,000 years ago. And they're pushing back the edge of what is known. I mean, we used to think that civilization and cities and this type of thing only started with the Sumerians about 4,000, 40, well, that's the Egyptians would be 4,500 years ago. The Sumerians would be 5,000, 5,500 years ago. And it's gone back further now with the discovery and the excavation of things like Göbekli. Am I pronouncing that right? I don't think I got it quite right, which which goes back to 7,500 years ago, another 2,000 years. Okay, that's great. But there's no evidence of any golden age or any mystical civilizations or any cycles. It's been a kind of a straight line thing for the
Hmm.
last 300,000 years, accelerating hyperbolically since the Ice Age, and then especially since when the whole thing went vertical, since the Industrial Revolution and all this stuff about golden ages and no evidence. This is all mythology, as far as I can
Hmm.
tell.
God, I was taking the question so much less cosmologically, I guess, than that. I was thinking much more of the hard times create hard men, kind of that sort of cycle. That when
Oh,
people, so that's the way I took it, but I think you're right. I think that was his question,
I
and
think
that there
that's
are
what he's
there's
talking
time
about
where
with
there,
those things. Yeah,
yeah,
and within all this, the last 7,000 years or 5,000, whatever you want to call as you're taking a starting point, yeah, civilizations rise and fall. Happens all the time.
okay. All right, this is kind of a rhetorical question, but we'll have at it. If it's okay for the U.S. to annex Greenland and Gaza, is it therefore okay for China to annex Taiwan?
Is it okay for the U.S. to annex Greenland and well,
Gaza? It's a
Gaza?
yeah.
Oh, there's so many of these. Look, I said on our last podcast here that this idea of annexing Gaza, I thought it was criminally insane. Why do I think it's criminal? Because the Gazans own Gaza. So is Trump proposing that you buy them out? I guess so, unless you're going to forcibly evict them, which is going to create another problem. And rebuild all that. Who's going to put that money up? The money to buy them out, the money to relocate them. Relocate them to where? To Egypt or Jordan? Well, they're not going to do it for free. You're going to have to pay for that too. So this is a great way to bankrupt the US government by getting it into the real estate development. I know. Don't worry, the Saudis will do it. And this is like the kind of pipe dream when you're smoking pot in college you have. I mean, so okay, so Gaza was one and Greenland is the other. Uh, well, you have the same problem. The Greenlanders, the natives, incidentally, the natives seem to have a beef against the Danes. There's 53,000, they say, people that live in Greenland, of which about 5,000 are Danish. And the natives don't like the Danes, but the Danes control the government. So what are you going to do if the US buys it? Who are they going to pay the money to? How's that going to be done? Because even if you have a house in the capital, Nuuk, I think it's called, in Greenland, you own the house, but you don't own the land that it's on. Your tribal collective owns the land. So, and what's the point of doing this anyway? If you want to develop any of the mineral deposits around the edges of Greenland, which are not buried under miles of ice, you can do that now. Under Danish law, under Greenland law, there are mining companies that are playing around with this stuff. So why do we have to take over Greenland, which costs the Danes, incidentally, about $10,000 per person per year, or about $500 million per year paid by Danish taxpayers to support Greenland? I don't understand the point of it. Are the Chinese going to invade it? I mean, why? Are the Russians going to invade it? Why? I mean, nobody goes there. Yes, this is all completely crazy.
All right, let's
Oh,
see.
but the question, wait a minute, I'm not answering the question. If
Yeah, the question-
that's okay, well, this is kind of a goofy question. If that's okay, and it's not okay in either case, is it okay for the Chinese to take over Taiwan? Uh, Actually, Taiwan's never really been part of China. I mean, more properly, you could say it's always been part of Japan. So this is this is all crazy. And if the Xi government wants to take over Taiwan, well, I think that's a mistake. But you know what? None of our business.
Okay. Let's see. There's a long question around government centralization. He says, we see this whole digitalization of all kinds of assets. And we had, for instance, the other day, Elon Musk saying that all government transactions should be put on the blockchain. Okay. And there's a reason for that. The transparency of payments would be clear. There'd be a much more audible ledger. So, but this trend is continuing on other things. And while we aren't going to have a CBDC, apparently, because it's executive order from Trump, it's clear that stable coins and other digital assets that could be used that way are certainly being, positioned to do so. So, he wonders if this effort for centralization of assets is all part of a effort or an effort of turning everything into digital assets. If it's all part of this trend towards centralization, that once the government knows what everything is and where everything is, because it's all digitized in this on this ledger, that then it allows for a greater centralization of those assets, that they can dispossess people of them more easily. I mean, do you see these two things working together like that?
Well, maybe, but maybe not, because Bitcoin is the basic reality of of all this, and it's extremely non-centralized. That's the whole advantage of Bitcoin. Uh, and right now, to prove that you have title to a piece of land, for instance, you have to go down to your county or whatever it is, and it's recorded on paper. But courthouses burn down and records are lost. So it's arguable that digital ledgers would be more permanent, more convenient, more accurate, incapable of being forged, for instance, which sometimes happens with land transfer documents. So I don't know. It's up to the market to decide what it prefers. Are there any dangers? Whenever you have the government involved in anything, there's always a danger because of the kind of people that get into government. I mean, there's a reason why everybody that serves in Congress for a few years emerges many, many millions of dollars richer than they are now. And nobody ever questions where that money came from. Never. They don't.
I know it's
So,
very interesting.
yeah. So I don't have anything against digitizing with the blockchain these things. It's the
Well,
next
you
evolution of technology.
take the basic example of title. It's a real problem in a huge part of the world. I mean, you might have clear transfer of title that could happen pretty easily in the US, but it's a gigantic process here in Uruguay where they have really clear and clean titles, but the you get a stack of paperwork like this that demonstrates from basically the beginning who, how the title is passed through people's hands. And Uruguay is one of the cleaner ones in Latin America for all that, or at least there's clear transfer
That's
available.
right. And there are some countries like Haiti. One of the many reasons why Haiti's a basket case is that nobody has title to anything in Haiti. There are no records. You can't prove ownership. The best you can do is live on it and say you owned it and your father owned it. But that can be contested. What's the proof?
Right?
So, yeah, the blockchain could improve things greatly.
Okay. Someone asked what you think of Jim Rogers selling out all of his U.S. stocks. He was on a podcast recently where he talked about that he was very uncomfortable with the U.S. market and that he was basically focused on silver was one of his strong calls right now. What do you think about him selling stocks?
I think Jimmy is really a smart guy. I mean, we've been friends for, I don't know, over 40 years. And he's generally very understated, but he's also, in addition to being very smart, he's very prudent. And he's well aware of the fact that by all the parameters, all the classic parameters, the stock market now is at an absolute all-time high. So yeah, I think he's absolutely right.
Okay. Talking about evil people again, he says, this question is, I realize that some people are truly evil. At the same time, I also know that the vast majority of people are not. Does Doug have any idea what the people that are working to bring this technocracy, again, this is people worried about technology, um, what the people who are trying to bring about technocracy, uh, sorry, sentence doesn't make sense, have as a vision for our future. They must see it as something good. Since everyone's not evil, most people are not evil, and they're pushing this advance in technology, what they must see something good. What do you think?
Well, look, uh, I'm a I'm a technophile, okay? I'm a believer in the benefits of technology. If it wasn't for technology, we'd still be beating on earth with sticks and grubbing for roots and berries. So technology is advancing at the rate of Moore's law in a number of areas at this point. I'm all for it. So nothing wrong with technology, but I don't believe in imposing it on people. I mean, if you have a tribe living on some islands off the coast of India, I mean, it's their land. You have no right there to go and impose your technology and your beliefs on them. And it's the same with these people that are techno. What are they? Techno.
In technocrats. But
technocrats.
technocrat obviously can imply something else, but he's talking about technology here. So
Yeah. Well, look, it all comes down to the use of coercion, the use of force, imposing your views or your technology on individuals or society as a whole. That's counterproductive at best. So I'm for technology, but I'm opposed to coercion and force. That's all there is to it.
yeah, and I think they get the people that have good intentions that are pushing technology, they see the promise of productivity gains, which improves the standard of living of everybody involved. And it's like it's the one thing that works, right? To improve standard of living is the increase in productivity that comes from technology.
Yeah. Yeah. You just can't make people do things. They have to adopt it voluntarily because they see it being to their individual advantage. So, yeah, use all the technology that you possibly can in your own life to improve your standard of living. And, people are like monkey see, monkey do. And when other people see that you're doing well because of the technology, they're going to do it too. You don't have to impose it on them.
Exactly. Exactly. So, this next question is about the interview we had with Paul Craig Roberts recently. It says that Roberts said that regulators tend to follow the business they regulate. And he said, I don't believe it unless those businesses are giant businesses, because small businesses don't receive the benefit of influence, especially when the regulation protects the big businesses at the expense of the small businesses. What do you think?
I think he's right. It's the big businesses that have the sway, have the money, have all kinds of power that they can make it really worthwhile for politicians to pass laws and regulations that favor them. And the little guy, well, he can't bribe them or influence them. So, yeah, of course he gets hurt. So, the answer to the question is it's not a question of big business being bad or small business being good. It's a question of the government being in a position to help or hurt either one of them. I mean, the problem here is not the size of the business. And of course, many businesses have gotten big because of their political connections. The problem is the state. Uh, you know, I try to emphasize this, and I'm not sure most people get it. It's that your real enemy is the state. Why? Because it is coercion made concrete. And you don't want to support anything that lives on force and coercion, which is what the state does. It doesn't create anything. It just takes assets from the producers and reallocates them to people that it likes. And the same with regulations. So your enemy is not big business or small business. It's the state as an institution, as an institution. Getting good guys, so-called, in the state is not the solution. It'll corrupt them for sure. It's not going to solve the problem. The institution will still be there.
Okay. Someone asks if what he asked about the movie Junior Bonner. Wants to know if you've seen it. It's from 1972. He says the Bretton Woods Agreement was canceled in 1971, and he says the film depicts how modern times dismantle the old. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't, but I've heard about that movie. And incidentally, uh, for my part, one of my parts of the book we're writing together, I put together a list of 25, an arbitrary list of arbitrary number of Western movies that show, well, Westerns are a special genre of movies. Uh, People that hate Westerns, in my view, are almost always bent people because Westerns put across the best aspects of America and what made America great. And if you like the ideas behind America, you like Western movies. almost entirely. Anyway, Junior Bonner, I've heard good things about it. Haven't watched it. Maybe it should be on the list of 25, or maybe it should go to 26. I'm going to watch that movie. I haven't thought about it for years, but I heard good things about it.
All right, I'll put it on my list too. Next question. Is China really so dependent on the US that they can't take radical action? They make even the most basic things like steel and brackets and wiring harnesses and injection molded plastic parts, etc. The most basic things are forgotten. If they stop all shipping to the US, then what will happen? Why does the US feel they have a higher power in this relationship? What am I missing?
Well, the Chinese have a lot of capital. I mean, they've been buying gold. Both the government has been buying gold for years. The country is the largest gold producer in the world. It doesn't export any gold. And if you go to China, you'll find gold shops everywhere where individual Chinese buy gold to keep the family's wealth together. So I think that China is actually becoming quite wealthy from a financial point of view, and they actually produce things, real things in factories, which is kind of beneath us. I mean, that stupid meme that was floating around some years ago, I don't know where it came from. It says, we think they work. Well, it turns out the Chinese can think just as well as we can, in addition to the fact they work. So actually, I think at this point the Chinese are moving ahead. I mean, look, the Chinese have come from when Deng Xiaoping took over in 1980. I mean, it was really primitive, really backward. They were plowing with oxen. I mean, the place was not just third world, it was fourth world. And now it's technology and it's cities and so much is as advanced as the US. And I think it's going to keep going in that direction. Uh,
So does the US have leverage over them? Like, can we just threaten them and bully them around if they aren't doing what we want them to do?
well, I think we could inconvenience them. In other words, right now, we give them fiat money and they give us real stuff. Uh, so we're getting the better end of that trade. But what are we going to do with our fiat money if we can't buy real stuff from China? Well, the Chinese will be inconvenienced. They'll have factories that are going to slow down radically, and they'll just have to sell their stuff to other people that want the stuff. But people want real stuff. They'll probably have to drop prices. If that happens, they sell it to the US. Well, it's easier to sell to a giant market and at higher prices. All right, so you're going to sell less stuff to, you know, less advanced countries. Well, this is why trade is such a good thing. It's that everybody benefits. The world's standard of living would be reduced radically if trade between the US and China stopped, but the US would be hurt much more than China would. Eventually, the US will start making this stuff too, I'm sure. Just as if the Guatemalans no longer wanted to sell us bananas. Yeah, I guess the US could grow bananas. Yeah, we could do that. We could build giant greenhouses and the bananas would cost several times more and they wouldn't be as good. And there wouldn't be as many. But yeah, we could do it. Same thing with China. Yeah.
Hmm. All
Not
right,
to that, obviously.
I want to get you to comment on this video of the Treasury Secretary talking about America's strong dollar policy. Just give me a second here. Okay, here we go.
Well, first of all, the strong dollar policy is completely intact with President Trump. And I was very happy at his Economic Club of New York speech in August when he reemphasized the importance of maintaining the dollar reserve currency status. But let's think about what does a strong dollar mean? It really means four things. One, that when we think about a fiat currency, a piece of paper is credibility. So a strong dollar is credibility and a rule of law that is backing it up. Two, it means a composite price on the screen, the Bloomberg Currency Index, that is the dollar moving up against that. Three, it is a bilateral price. So what's important to remember is the dollar is either weak or strong versus something else. So we want the dollar to be strong. What we don't want is other countries to weaken their currencies to manipulate their trade. And then fourth, that we want to have the best policies that create the environment for a strong dollar.
What do you think, Doug? Is that much of a definition of a strong dollar?
I think it's total bullshit. Scott Bessent is obviously a very smart guy, vastly smarter than that little dwarf that should have been slicing pastrami in back of a deli counter.
Janet Yellen.
Janet Yellen. Yes. But if we go through what he just said and analyze it sentence by sentence, what he's trying to do is rope-a-dope by saying things that because he's the Secretary of the Treasury, even if people don't understand it, because a lot of it's just bullshit and incomprehensible and wrong, people will accept it because, well, hey, he's a self-made billionaire and he's Secretary of the Treasury. It must make sense. He must be right. But we could break this thing down. He's talking about America having a rule of law. Really? If it had a real rule of law that made its currency valuable, one of the points that he made, we'd never have stolen hundreds of billions of dollars from the Russians. I mean, that doesn't happen where you have a rule of law, where you just arbitrarily decide you're going to take it away from them. It's not like there's a declaration of war or anything like that. We could go through that thing.
It was credibility because of rule of law, so it has credibility.
It probably does, but it's vanishing. Okay.
And then the second one is it's relative to a composite, the DXY compared to all other currencies. So it's just a relative situation. It's not about strength as something based upon something.
Well, he knows better than that because he stated that the largest component of his personal portfolio is gold. And so our floating abstraction is better than other people's floating abstraction. Well, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. But he's
Make you strong.
Strong. It's not being destroyed at as fast a rate as these other fiat. It's nice that he used the word fiat currencies. So he knows what's going on. He's a big gold buyer. He uses the word. You've never heard in the past a Treasury Secretary use the word fiat. I mean, that would have been anathema. But, I think what he's got to do is defend an irrational policy. And he's doing it the best he can because that's what he's supposed to do as Treasury Secretary.
Right. And it's basically his second point, which is the DXY, the composite to other currencies, is basically the same answer as his third point, which is bilateral. It's strong compared to a single particular currency. That's again relative.
Yeah, it's kind of saying the same thing. All other currencies, bilateral, one other currency. Okay, right. Okay, that's kind of obvious.
Yeah, and his last one was that we have an environment which supports all of the other points. That's his fourth one. His fourth pillar is that it's an environment which supports all of those other points.
Okay, well, sure. If you have a free market society with low taxes and low regulations, that would be supportive. I guess that's what he's, and I guess Trump is kind of trying to do that. Definitely get rid of the regulations. So yeah, there's certainly an element of truth in what he said. But the only solution to this is to go to a commodity money. And that means gold. And it means 100% reserves for the Treasury and the dollar. In fact, the U.S. shouldn't even be in the currency business. And the banks will have to go to 100% reserves as well. The whole system has got to be overhauled because it's going to collapse eventually. So, we were talking about this.
Yeah, I'll release that in a separate episode, I think. that one. But
Yeah, rather than redoing it all now, people that are interested in the subject should look at our next.
yeah, look at the next one. You'll find it interesting. Let's call it the Mar-a-Lago Accord. So just
Yeah,
gotta think about it. But
yeah.
so
I mean, the whole concept and the whole operation of monetary systems today is so bizarre. It's like a rat's nest of all kinds of things. It really should be overturned and abolished, frankly. So it's hard to talk about because people accept ridiculous concepts as part of the cosmic firmament at this point. And that's why you have 10,000 people working for the Federal Reserve, shuffling papers and crunching numbers with bizarre formulas. It's unreal. It all should be abolished and go away. You use gold as money, and banks are run on traditionally sound banking principles. We have demand deposits and time deposits, and it's 100% reserves. The world is entirely too over financialized at this part at this moment in time.
yeah. I think Scott here is trying to redefine what it means to have a strong dollar so that they can engage in policies that create a weak dollar. I think that's the whole point of what he's doing. And I think, as you'll see in the next episode where Doug and I talked about this, I think we're going to get at least some of the things that you're talking about, Doug, with something real at the bottom of it, something real that's behind it all. I think that's happening. I think we're going to see it. It's going to come way faster than people expect it. So
Yeah, I think Scott is in the unfortunate position of having to do what government officials are paid to do, which is basically obscure and lie. Uh, that's really, and he knows better.
yeah, because but also if you were clear with the public about what exactly you're doing, it would be impossible to actually implement what you plan to do, right? And I think that's the state has to it's set up to lie to its citizens, among many other negative things.
And if he was clear about it right now, there'd be a panic towards the exits, you know. So he almost can't tell the truth. It's a terrible position to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. One other video I thought about sharing was that quick clip, the question that was asked to that Bank of England representative. Do you want me to share that? Would you like to see that?
Uh,
That's the one where the guy he tries to stammers around trying to explain what's
oh
happening.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah,
yeah.
let me share that.
Central banking. I wanted to ask about gold, given it can act as an inflation hedge and the current liquidity stress in what you said yourself last week is one of the world's major markets. So how much gold has now left the BOV vaults in anticipation of tariffs? And with bullion banks looking to borrow from central banks that hold their gold at the BOV, what is the central bank doing to help alleviate current queues?
Dave, do you want to?
Yeah, I didn't. I think I picked up the question. And look, there's.
Now, just for context, if people don't know, there's essentially been a run on physical gold out of the LBMA and out of the Bank of England for demand for delivery in the US. So there's been a huge amount that's moved out and moved into the physical stores. This guy is the guy to explain what's going on.
You know, it's worth, given that this is the NPR press conference, it's worth putting what's been happening to gold, which is the detail of your question, in the context of what's going on in the world economy and the uncertainties out there. And, you know, it's also worth bearing in mind that, because this helps explain some of the facts around the time it's going to take to get gold out of the bank's vaults, because of the nature of our approach to the gold. So, I mean, the first.
Now, what does he mean by the nature of our approach to the gold, Doug? What could that possibly mean?
You know, he knows that he's got to answer the question, but he's answering the question by Well, he's doing what Kamala Harris always used to do. It's a word salad that he's creating. At best, he's giving an answer like Biden's ex-press secretary, that cute black girl with the frizzy hair. What was her
Yeah.
name? It's the kind of answer that she would give. Lots of words, saying nothing.
Yeah, no, and so I'll play the rest of the video, but what do you think? So just so you know, people have wanted to withdraw their gold from the Bank of England. It supposedly has, he'll tell you how much in a minute, but they've delayed it up to 6 weeks now to get it. People are in back order.
Yeah,
First
how
thing to
hard?
say
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, let me just play the last. It's only another minute.
is, and I think this is broadly known, but we have the second largest stock of gold in the world, over 400,000 bars of gold at the moment. That's gone down a bit since the end of 2024, reflecting the market conditions that you're talking about and have been a feature in the news. But the stock has gone down by about 2% since the end of, so that's important to keep that in perspective. And the US gold market has been trading at a premium to the London market, and commercial gold holders have been looking to take advantage of that price differential. So they've been, there's been strong demand for delivery slots. We can meet that demand. All of our main counterparties, as it were, or better to say, all of those bodies who ship the gold have, they've all got the delivery slots they need over the next few weeks. If you were coming in new to us, you might have to wait a bit longer because all the existing slots are booked up. But this is a very orderly process. It is worth stressing compared to some of the markets we usually talk about. I mean, it's an obvious point, but gold is a physical asset, so there are real logistical constraints and security constraints. Getting into the bank for me this morning was a bit trickier because there was a lorry in the bullion yard. I mean, that's how it. But that's just the reality of it. It takes time, and the stuff is also quite heavy, as you know.
So Doug, he's not very confidence inspiring about the state of their gold that they've got there, is he?
No, it's like he's taking speaking lessons from Kamala. So what did he say? He said that, and it's unclear to me, it's not the Bank of England, because the Bank of England sold all of its gold under Prime Minister Brown about 22 years ago. So maybe they bought some back. So I don't think the Bank of England has any gold to speak of, not much anyway, unless they've been buying it back. Maybe they have. So whose gold is this? The London Metals Exchange, I suppose. All right. So if they have 400,000 400-ounce bars, we did the math the other day, a couple of days ago. We were looking at this, and I can't. The numbers are large. 400,000 bars, and they've delivered 2% of it. That means they've delivered 8,000 bars. Am I missing some zeros?
No, that seems right.
Okay, 8,000 bars. All right. Why is this such a logistical problem? I mean,
That seems like nothing.
8,000 bars. That's not a whole lot. I mean, you'd think they'd be in a position to deliver something that's owed when asked. If you have it, you can deliver it one way or another, but they can't. Why?
Well, it's heavy, Doug. I don't know if you know.
Well,
It's heavy.
that's true. They're gonna have to get some forklifts or some strong guys, but they're available. They can be hired, and there are trucks and airplanes that are suitable for doing this type of thing.
They do it all day, every day, right now.
Yes, they do. why is this such a big deal? I mean, we're not talking about delivering, millions of tons of iron ore. Okay, that can take time. I understand, but
It makes you wonder if there's this, there's a squeeze of some kind, or they didn't, or the gold there is not, it's burdened in some way already. It's been rehypothecated, or it's been leased out and isn't available for delivery or something.
once again, Kamala comes to the rescue. We don't want to be burdened by things which have been. Uh,
Exactly. Well, so anyway, so there's been this huge gold run, or at least a gold, where gold is massive quantities being moved into the U.S. and someone's taking possession of it there. And we talk about that in the next video too. So let me have, I wanted to share that video before we lost it, because this is a perfect example of how you do not handle a crisis, is because there's a potential crisis, at least in the psychology of people who might be wondering, is my gold that's stored there even there anymore? I would be more worried after listening to that than I was before.
yeah, you wonder, what is he trying to hide, and why can't a person in his position, who should have access to all the numbers and all the realities, why can't he explain it clearly and succinctly? Well, wait a minute, why? Is it because he has to lie, but he's got to be careful about how he lies, so he can't be directly caught up in it? So, well, you spew out a word salad, so you
Right.
say it without saying anything.
It's a mess. Something's going on. All right. The last question I have for you, Doug, is when can we enjoy the next sequel of the High Ground novels?
Well, John Hunt and I work together on these things, and John uh, has been, he's really turned into a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest. He's got a lot of things to do, and he's supposed to churn out the basic novel and then kicks it over to me, and I revise it and do all kinds of things with it. So, uh,
But
good
he's
question.
working. He's working, right?
Yes, he is working. He's John. If there's anybody in the world that I know that is honest and reliable, it is John,
Yeah.
and he is working on it. It's just going slowly, and then once it gets into my hands,
That's
uh,
where the action starts.
yeah, and it'll probably go even more slowly,
Yeah.
but it should be good because the title of the book is Terrorist, and it was supposed to be a science fiction series, but reality keeps jumping ahead of where we are.
In a way, I'm glad it's been delayed, because that means our terrorist era is going to take a little longer before it hits us, because you usually release them right perfect timing with what's happening in the world.
Yeah, well, Warlord may be about on time if the US starts breaking up, but all of Africa is breaking up, incidentally, right now. People aren't aware of that. They don't, who follows what's going on in Africa? Almost nobody. So I think Warlord is going to be spot on. And the big question is novel 6, which is titled Antichrist. Will that be spot on or
Hold
not?
off, hold off, hold off on
Well,
that.
well, and especially, God forbid, we hold off on number 7, which is entitled Apocalypse.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad John has a lot of other things to work on in that respect, at least.
Yeah,
Which,
and we don't want reality to follow artwork too closely.
no. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today, Doug. I'll get our previous conversation published and early next week, and we'll get back together on Wednesday for more.
Okay, Matt, as they say, I'll get her done.
Awesome. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.